Cho'Gall is two heroes but in the same body. Cho is the one controlling the movement and has mostly tank-focused and melee abilities, while Gall is more damage-focused and plays like a mage that is just attached to Cho. They have an enormous health bar, no resources aside from cooldowns, and as long as they don't disagree with each other, can be a serious force to reckon with. Their traits are a toggled ability that can either be 25% armor or 25% more damage for Gall. There's not much else to it, but it's one of the several ways that they have to be on the same page at any given time, and it's a mode that determines what is more valuable to the both of them at the moment. If they have armor active, could that cause a target to live on low health? Could it cause them to get bursted down if they want the damage? It's not particularly busted to have either, though Gall doesn't really need the damage at higher levels due to his low cooldowns. Hyde has two level 1 talents. Calloused Hide gives healing and move speed bonuses under a health threshold. The Will of Cho grants a permanent armor bonus for minion kills and hero takedowns. The only other talent for Hyde is Enraged Regeneration, which heals them every time Cho damages an opposing hero. It has an added effect of reducing healing for a later ability. Rage has two talents, Ogre Rampage, which increases the damage bonus of Ogre Rage while in combat, and the Will of Gall is a stacking permanent increase to Ogre Rage's damage bonus on takedowns. From here, I'll discuss their abilities separately since they are actually two different heroes. Starting with Cho, his Q is a dash that can be channeled to increase the length and knocks aside all enemies in the path. It's not the most notable of hard crowd control abilities, but it does get Cho around, unless he's interrupted. Uppercut is overshadowed by the other two level 4 talents, but offers some anti-tank damage in the event it's needed. Power Surge helps Cho get around even more, and even offers a slow to those hit by the ability, in the event he dives an important target. Surging Dash is incredibly simple and strong for it. Just at the press of a button, Cho can rapidly regenerate health so long as he isn't interrupted, and can do this in or out of combat. Cho's W is an AoE around him that deals damage over time to all enemies hit, and heals him for every enemy effective. He can also extend the duration of the damage over time with basic attacks. It's pretty solid for a healing ability, especially because it heals the same from minions as it does heroes, so fighting in the middle of waves can grant a lot of extra survivability. It has a level 1 talent, Consuming Fire, that increases its healing against heroes, which is pretty niche compared to the other level 1s, and the level 7 talent Firestarter, which decreases the cooldown by a couple seconds base as well as per basic attack when extending the damage over time. His E throws a bomb at long range that accelerates while it rolls, and Gall can detonate it at any point for much more damage and a small AoE around it. It doesn't have a very long cast animation and covers a very large area, so it's pretty cost effective in terms of time invested to damage dealt within a fight. Rollback is strong not only because it's a second damage instance for a single cast, but gives Gall an even longer window to detonate it on any particular target. The only other talent is Runic Feedback, which reduces the cooldown when Gall's ability hits both minions and heroes. Cho's first ult is a much more effective hard crowd control ability that knocks back enemies and stuns them for a short duration. It also gives a passive damage bonus to his basic attacks and has the enormous upside of having a cooldown comparable to most basic abilities in the game. It isn't the most monumental or game-changing ability, but it can increase survivability by quite a ton. The Storm talent, though, allows for Cho to play a less risky style by turning him into a range character, basics having the same range as his W, and adds a slow on hit. It's a lot easier to keep up W damage on any one target he wants with this talent. His second ult is a large AoE that pulls all enemies towards him after a second delay, dealing moderate damage and slowing them for a few seconds after the displacement. A much stronger hard crowd control ability as opposed to the other ult choice, but it does have a longer cooldown and potentially gives a free dash to an opposing diver depending on where his teammates are relative to Cho before the ult. The Storm talent slightly remedies this downside by adding a 2-second route to all targets hit. I prefer this ult more for synergy purposes and because it will seriously help more than hurt when you can pull backlines directly into your team. He has some other strong non-ability talents. Seared Flesh is a basic attack talent that gives bonus damage from consistently landing basic attacks on heroic targets, which is good synergy with his W starting early on with it being a level 4 talent. Twilight Veil massively increases the armor gain from Ogre for an alright duration. Molten Block kinda covers the same scenarios, negating a lot of incoming damage, with the latter having the upside of cleansing damage over time, as well as damaging nearby enemies during the stasis period. The only trade-off being the cooldowns, Veil being half the minute cooldown of Molten Block. Rune Gauntlet has a pretty whack effect of decreasing his heroic abilities cooldown on landing basic attacks, which is pretty normal, but it not only reduces them by a percentage, which is already wild because Cho has short heroic ability cooldowns already, but it also reduces Gall's cooldown. It helps out Gall a lot more in this instance because both of Gall's ults are long cooldowns, as well as both having strong synergy with Upheaval. The last notable talent here is Hour of Twilight, which just reduces the death timer by 50%, which is just a lot of upsides, though once they hit 20, it is kinda hard for Cho to die. Alright, now we're on to the other hero in this hero. Gall has 2 abilities for free due to not being in control of the character's positioning. His mount button becomes a small push to Cho, which functions kinda like a knockback, and also grants him 25% movement speed for a short time. It grants a little bit of influence to where he is and can help peel Cho away from burst during a crowd control chain. He has 2 level 1 talents to choose from that affect Shove, either increasing Cho's movement speed to above mounted for a longer duration, or reducing the cooldown whenever Cho is basic attacked. I tend to favor the former since very few heroes can achieve 135% movement speed, and Cho can be channeling a gap-closing dash while moving this fast. His other ability is an eye that can be placed to grant vision of a large area for a long duration. He also has 2 charges of this ability, though they aren't difficult to take down if they're seen. It also has a talent that contends with the Shove talents at level 1, which can give it a decreased cooldown, longer cast range, and a tad more durability. Gall's Q is a line skill shot that does a good bit of damage. Period. The greatest strength is in its very short cooldown, which allows him to repeatedly wail on at least one target, if not multiple targets if they're lined up. Edge of Madness increases Shadow Flame's cooldown to any single hero, stacking per hit up to 60%. It's pretty effective if Cho is with that same single target priority playstyle. Double Trouble, though, has a lot more broad usage in lowering the cooldown of Shadow Flame permanently by half a second once the quest is completed, which is just above a 16% cooldown reduction at all times. Either one of those has a lot of potential to synergize with Searing Shadows, which just adds max health percentage damage to Shadow Flame. His W is a much weirder skill shot that starts as a small AoE, then bounces twice after that in the same line at the same distance it was initially cast at. It also does okay damage and can lock down areas while Cho is moving around. The minimum bounce range is not short enough to stack them directly on top in the event the target is rooted or stunned for a long duration. Rising Dread turns the ability into a pretty significant AoE damage payload and can reverse the bounce for a little more control of the spell. Twilight Nova contests a larger AoE but isn't ridiculously strong due to opponents having to position in a pretty weird way to get good usage of this talent. Leaden Orb gives Gall a pretty powerful AoE crowd control ability, and Gall cannot be stopped from doing this at any point, so it can definitely help his team with peel, all while he's still dealing moderate sustained damage. Gall's E is the other half of Cho's bomb, which is simply a detonation dealing good damage around the bomb instantly. Yet another on the pile of good but simple AoE spells in his kit. Runic Persistence is damage over time attached to the detonation, contesting with Bombs Away, which adds a flat damage bonus but also increases the speed and the already pretty huge range of the bomb. The only other talent adds a Silence, but contesting Leaden Orb with a worse crowd control makes it a little niche due to being easier to dodge in only a single instance. Gall's first ult is a 1-second delay before a rapid-fire barrage out from Cho'Gall, dealing moderately low damage to the first target hit 20 times over 4 seconds. The opponents can see the cast indicator, so while still difficult or impossible to dodge, they can see it coming. It's a really solid ability if even most of the barrage hits the intended target, but it's susceptible to being body blocked by a tankier target once they see the indicator. The Storm talent makes it so that the ability pierces all enemies hit, but it's still kinda hard to hit moving targets at max range of the ability, even if it can't be body blocked. His second ult is an AoE around Cho'Gall that takes 1 second to prepare, which slows enemy in the AoE, then can be detonated at any point in the next 5 seconds to deal high damage. This ability is a really solid one and pretty much the most game-changing heroic among both heroes, with an appropriately long cooldown. It has an obvious synergy in Cho's Upheaval, which can be cast at any point while Gall is channeling to guarantee landing it on whoever Cho hits while pulling them out of position at the same time. The Storm talent can teleport Cho a moderate distance before preparing the ability, but that requires a considerably high level of coordination between the two heroes. The other talents include Psychotic Break, which increases his damage against enemy heroes by 10% at all times, and also allows Gall to use abilities for 10 seconds after Cho dies. It's surprisingly unpopular in my experience, though, which could be attributed to the fact that it has some value in being a post-mortem talent. The other notable talent is Shadow Snare, which is yet another niche crowd control talent competing with Leaden Orb, though it's applied by all of his basic abilities, so he can peel while Cho is doing whatever he needs to do in the meantime. So that's the lowdown on these heroes, which I honestly can't definitively say one way or the other if they are busted or not. There's not much to compare them to, but it's a sort of high-risk powerhouse that can self-sustain at the expense of being fairly susceptible to crowd control and armor reduction. In my opinion, it's sort of made up for and then some, in neither of them having resources needed for spells and high health sustain for fighting multiple targets. The downside being if the opposing team can hold them down and grind through their monstrous health bar, they are rewarded with 2 heroes worth of XP. Within heroes, there are actually good depictions of strong and unique characters with legitimate downsides, but these two seem the most forgiving to me.